He brought food to the alien mother and daughter every day, until one day he said, "Come live with me." The ruins of New Geneva stretched endlessly under the crimson sky, a testament to humanity's first disastrous contact with the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus Chen picked his way through the rubble, his worn boots crunching on crystalline debris that had once been skyscrapers. In his weathered hands, he carried a metal container, today's offering to the two beings who had become the most important part of his daily routine. The war had ended 3 months ago, not with victory parades or surrendering armies, but with exhaustion. The Zephyrians had withdrawn to their orbital stations, leaving behind a planet scarred and broken. Most humans had fled to the underground, cities or the polar settlements. Marcus had stayed, like a handful of others, to pick through what remained of civilization. He found them in the same place as always, the collapsed subway tunnel beneath what used to be Central Square. The mother, Kesiara, huddled against the tunnel wall with her daughter, Vila, pressed close to her side. Their bioluminescent patches glowed weakly, a sign of malnutrition that made Marcus's chest tighten with familiar concern. "Good morning," Marcus said softly in broken Zephyrian, the words feeling clumsy on his human tongue. He had been teaching himself their language for weeks now, using salvaged translation devices and pure determination. Kesara's large, compound eyes tracked his movement as he approached. Her species had evolved from something like Earth's praying mantises, but larger, more graceful. Her chitinous exoskeleton bore scars from debris, and one of her 4 arms hung at an odd angle, an injury that hadn't healed properly. "Marcus, friend!" Vila chirped in accented English, her smaller form brightening at his arrival. The young Zephyrian had proven remarkably quick at picking up human languages. "You bring food gift again?" "Always," Marcus replied, setting down the container and opening it carefully. Steam rose from the contents, a stew he'd made from scavenged, protein bars, hydroponic vegetables, and water he'd purified himself. It wasn't much, but it was nutritious and, more importantly, digestible for Zephyrian physiology. Kesara made the clicking sound that Marcus had learned meant gratitude. Her translator, a battered device that flickered intermittently, crackled to life. "Human Marcus shows kindness beyond reason. Why?" It was a question she asked often, and Marcus never quite knew how to answer. How could he explain that finding them here, 2 refugees from the enemy species, had given his purposeless existence meaning again? How could he tell her that her daughter's laughter was the first joy he'd heard since the bombs fell? "Because it's right," he said simply, watching Vila dig into the stew with enthusiasm. As the days turned to weeks, their routine became sacred to Marcus. He would wake before dawn, prepare food, check his water purification system, and then make the dangerous journey through the unstable ruins to reach them. Sometimes he brought other supplies, blankets salvaged from destroyed stores, medical gel for Kesara's injuries, or simple toys made from scrap metal for Vila. In return, they taught him about Zephyrian culture, their history, their perspective on the war that had devastated both their species. Kesara had been a botanist before the conflict, studying ways to adapt Earth plants to Zephyrian soil. Vila was fascinated by human engineering, constantly asking questions about how their machines worked. Marcus learned that they were stranded. Their transport had been damaged in the final bombardment, leaving them unable to reach the evacuation ships. They were survivors, just like him, trying to make sense of a senseless war. The revelation came on a Tuesday, exactly 97 days after their first meeting. Marcus arrived to find Kesara weaker than usual, her bioluminescent patches flickering erratically. The translator was failing, and her words came in broken fragments. "Cannot much longer. Tunnel floods when rains come." Vila clung to her mother, her own glow dim with worry. The seasonal rains would begin soon, Marcus realized. The tunnel would become uninhabitable. possibly deadly. That night, Marcus sat in his small shelter, a reinforced basement he'd converted into a livable space, and stared at the ceiling. He had running water, a functional heating system, and enough space for a small family. He had everything they needed to survive. But taking them in meant more than sharing resources. It meant openly harboring former enemies, risking the anger of other human survivors who might discover them. It meant becoming responsible for their lives in ways that went beyond daily food offerings. Marcus thought of Vila's bright curiosity, of Kesara's quiet dignity despite her suffering. He thought of the war that had made them all victims, and the peace that would only be meaningful if it included mercy. The next morning, he arrived at the tunnel with a different kind of offering. Along with the usual container of food, he carried a small bag, supplies for a journey. "Kesara, Vila," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "The rains are coming. This place isn't safe anymore." Both aliens looked at him with those large, unreadable eyes. Marcus took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change all their lives. "Come live with me." The silence stretched long enough that Marcus wondered if the translator had finally died completely. Then Vila made a sound he'd never heard before, a musical trill that seemed to contain all the hope in the world. "Yes, Marcus, friend," she said, "we come home with you." And in the ruins of a broken world, a new kind of family began.